Hello and welcome, IA&B members. We are so glad that you could join us today. Welcome to the HR webinar, The Post-Pandemic Workplace. My name is Jennifer Ross. I'm the VP of Marketing for IA&B. I am not Jason Ernest, the President and CEO for IA&B. It was advertised that he would be hosting today. However, Jason does need to attend a conference, so I am his stunt double. So again, welcome, and we're going to get started. Insurance agents and brokers, we are the premier resource and champion for independent agents in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. And if you didn't know this, we have more than 1,100 members. So you're part of a great club, and we're glad that you are members and taking advantages of this type of member resource. If you didn't know, we do have 23 staff members, and please consider our staff an extension of your office. So if you happen to need anything, please give us a call. We're here to help and serve you. And if you haven't already, I hope you'll go to iab4me.com and check out our many member resources. We have resources specifically for agents in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. We have industry news and analysis, resources for E&O prevention, marketing, carrier resources, and legal compliance. And as you probably know, and I hope you've been able to take advantage of this, if you have any question at all, you can contact Claire or Dawn. And this is a very specific member benefit. They can help you with so many things and ask you, or they can help you answer your questions. In fact, I'd like to tell you that when the experts in our industry have questions, guess who they call? Claire or Dawn. So please make sure that you have their name, email, and phone number available to you. Now, as you can imagine, since March 22, we have received a lot of requests for HR guidance and resources, and we have been able to provide you with that in a couple webinars the past 2 to 3 years. And we're really excited and happy that we can provide you the post-pandemic workplace HR webinar today. And I'd like to thank and welcome Karen DiGioia. She is the VP Senior HR Consultant from Herbein, Mosteller HR Consulting. Karen, welcome, and thank you so much for helping our members today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to be here. If you give me just one moment here, I will share my screen and we'll go from there.
And I did want to note to our participants that if you do have a question you'd like to ask, please enter it into the chat room. We will answer questions around 10:35, give or take. We're going to answer questions at the end of Karen's presentation. And if for some reason we don't get to your question, we will absolutely follow up with you. Again, thank you so much, Karen. And so everyone knows, mics and cameras are turned off and the focus is on Karen. Take it away, Karen. Thank you.
Oh man, now that makes me nervous. No, it's a pleasure to be here, as I said. As Jennifer introduced, my name is Karen DiGioia. I've been working in HR for over 35 years now, 18 years approximately in consulting. With the Herbein Mosteller HR Consulting, we work with organizations, we work with companies to help improve them through their most important resource, their employees. I also partner with IA&B to provide HR resources and support to member agencies. I can't actually see the names of everybody who's out there right now while I'm sharing my screen, but some of you I may have had the pleasure of talking to directly, and HR consulting services through our organization are another one of the member benefits that are available to you through IA&B. As you can imagine, we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years helping our clients navigate through COVID and COVID-related challenges. And that includes the major shift in the way many people are working. So we're here today to talk about the remote workplace, what I title, going with the flow in a more fluid workplace. 2020 brought us a lot of things, masks, social distancing, remote work. Fortunately, a number of these things are pretty well behind us at this point, but it does seem pretty certain that remote work isn't going away. So I want to spend some time today talking about remote work, why it's important, the opportunities that it presents, some of the challenges, and ways to address those challenges. Start out here with my double disclaimer. First of all, I am not an attorney. I am an HR professional. My second disclaimer is everything I say, especially if it's related to any kind of regulatory stuff or even labor market statistics, subject to change at a moment's notice. I think if 2020 told us anything, there is no crystal ball anymore. So the ability to see into the future and say with certainty, this is the way things are going to be for the future, is certainly, I don't think, something any of us are willing to do anymore. By way of context, I am coming to you obviously remotely. I work remotely, and I have done so for, I guess, about 27 years now. So I worked remotely before remote work was a thing. So I personally have a lot of experience with remote work and have seen it succeed. The organization that I work for, we have at this point in time, I guess, about 26 consultants. And while some of them spend time on site with clients, the bulk of us are working at least part-time in a remote manner. So, and as Jen said, if time allows, at the end, we will address some questions. So feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat. If we don't have time or don't have the ability to address them all, typically there's been some follow-up afterwards, and we'll be happy to send out a document that provides some answers to questions that you have. So to start, I'd like to just create a little bit of context. Why are we talking about remote work still? 2020 is behind us. COVID is certainly not what it was in 2020 and 2021. So why are we still talking about remote work? The world that we're in right now is why we're doing that. A survey by Extensus HR showed that 3 out of 4 business leaders are losing sleep over employee retention. So I don't know if you're lucky enough to be the 1 in 4 that isn't, but we're going to talk about the reasons behind that lack of sleep. And really all of that is related to the current state of talent. Quit rate has been around or over 4 million employees a month. That trend has been happening for about 1.5 years and isn't showing signs of slowing. Job openings, on the other hand, are significant. 10.7 million job openings at the end of September. Unemployment was at 5.7 at that point in time. So simple math tells us that even if there's a direct correlation between those who are looking for jobs and the job openings that are there, even if there's a direct skills match, there aren't enough people for all the roles that are out there and all the openings. Labor participation rates are down. This largely was the result of things that happened in 2020 and COVID. Early retirements on the part of folks who were getting close to retirement age, folks who just opted for one reason or another out of the workforce and have not come back in. Entrepreneurial activity was up about 24% in 2021. after declining over a 40-year period. So more people going on their own, opening their own businesses, doing their own thing. So we're in a time that still is being referenced at, the Great Resignation, the talent shortage. It really was a perfect storm of a variety of factors that brought us here. COVID brought a lot of folks who were rethinking their priorities. I've seen the term pandemic epiphanies and the you only live once economy, but people really reassessing. Again, early retirements, people opting out of the workforce. There was certainly delayed turnover. People stayed in place back in 2020, early 2021, while COVID was at its height. At this point in time, while we may be still seeing a little bit of catch up on the delayed turnover, I think we're over that period, but the other things are still contributing. There's a major skill shortage and a mismatch. As the slide before, we're talking about the number of openings versus the number of people. And again, there's not a direct match. So even if each one of those people who's looking for a job right now, filled into one of those vacancies, it just doesn't directly match in terms of the skills there. Overall population trends are shifting. As baby boomers are exiting the workforce, there are fewer coming in to backfill. So the expectations are, I wish I could give you good news and say, like, look, this is a temporary, we need to just have a certain amount of time out from 2020, and this is all going to get better. But the expectations really aren't that we're going to see major change there. The expectations are that, the epiphanies that happened in 2020 and 21 are still a reality for folks. And we also, by 2023, all baby boomers will be 65 or older. So again, that continues the flow of folks out of the workforce with not as many coming into backfill. Automation at some point may start to help fill the gap. Certainly the challenge for talent right now is motivating organizations like Amazon and other large organizations to move into automation at a faster pace than they were already intending. But that's not going to fix the issue that we're in, and automation only really applies to a certain subset of the jobs. So right now we're in a situation where employees and candidates really have the power. And if they don't find what they want, either with a potential employer or a current employer, they've got plenty of opportunity to go elsewhere. And what they want is, at least in part for many folks, the opportunity for remote or hybrid work. So, oops, hang on a second. I went forward a couple. It's fine. So what can an employer do to thrive in this environment? I mean, the good news is that there is a lot that you can do. The bad news is there's no one single magic bullet. But our focus is to talk today on one of the things that organizations can do to assist with both the ability to attract and the ability to retain talent, and that's remote work. The slide before that I skipped through, and I don't know how to get back to it. So really focused on a McKinsey report from a while ago that showed that, let's see, what were the statistics? About 13% of employees, hang on a second, I can't read because it's small. Anyway, the opportunity for remote work really has risen to the top of candidate conversations. So it used to be candidates were looking for pay, benefits, and wanted to no significant amounts about that prior to accepting a job. The opportunity for remote work has come to the same spot in terms of priorities for candidates. Now, having said that, remote work is not for everyone. So studies have shown that while many are leaving jobs because they don't have an opportunity to work remotely, they're also showing that there are some folks who are leaving because the employer has gone fully remote and the employees don't want to. So the context there for me is it's important to recognize that not everyone is the same. Not everyone's desire for the way that they do their best work is the same. And to whatever degree you can, you want to avoid a one-size-fits-all approach to the way folks are working. And I'll use my son as an example. He works as a headhunter for an organization in Philadelphia. He has the ability to work fully remote. He recognizes that his best work takes place in the office. So he chooses to go into the office each and every day. If his employer was requiring him to work remotely, chances are he'd be making a shift to another employer because he realizes he doesn't work well that way. Coworkers of his other folks work fine fully and are fully remote. So it's important to recognize the individuality of folks and provide that kind of flexibility to whatever degree you can. So talking about remote work, the reality that we're in at this point in time, and again, I don't have a magic crystal ball, can't see too far down the line, but all indications are that remote work is here to stay. So that when we were toward the end of 2020, 21, early 21, lots of organizations were saying, okay, when can we get back to the office? When can we return to normal? And all indications are at this point is that there will be no return to the old normal. The landscape of work has permanently altered. So that any organizations that are trying to take a very black and white, all or nothing approach to this and saying, hey, 100%, we're back in the office, these are the expectations, are really, really creating a disconnect between what their employees are expecting and considering reasonable. And what we're seeing with organizations, and this is within our client base, but you also, see the headlines on organizations, whether it's Google or Facebook, that make steps to say, hey, we're returning to the office, we're doing employee pushback, and then the next thing you know, they're backpedaling on the plans. So that organizations that are failing to embrace the new normal are truly at a competitive disadvantage. Surveys have shown that significant percentage of employees, 61% of employees, prefer being fully remote, and more than half of them are willing to change jobs for one that allows them more flexibility than their current. Again, we talked before about over 4 million a month who are leaving jobs. That's 47 million US workers left their jobs in 2021, and that quit rate continues at more than 4 million a month. So organizations are doing all they can to retain and to slow the pace at which folks are leaving. So when we talk about remote work, it's important to start with a definition. So remote work is at its basis, any work that's done away from the physical office location. Most commonly, you're looking at that being the employee's home, but it could be a coffee shop, a hotel room, literally anywhere. So I don't know where your agencies are along the in-person, hybrid, fully remote spectrum. And I don't think we've got easy way here to do a show of hands, so I'm not going to ask that. So advantages to remote work. We've been talking about the ability to retain and attract folks, and that certainly is one of the primary advantages. Statistics have shown, studies have shown that there is a definite increase in productivity for individuals who are working remotely. You've got less time spent commuting to and from work. Using technology better has really pushed organizations and people to work more efficiently and to work smarter. So we've definitely seen a significant increase in productivity. Now, that's not to say that there aren't folks who are less productive when they're working remotely. Using the example of my son, who chooses to go into the office, he realizes that his productivity goes down when he's working remotely. So again, for him, remote work is not the best option. For organizations, remote work increases the talent pool. As we've talked about, the labor market is incredibly tight. Remote work allows you to go out to a much larger geographic footprint when you're recruiting. If people are, coming into the office each and every day, typically folks are not looking to commute more than half hour, 45 minutes, what have you. Remote work allows you to increase the talent pool. I have clients that have a fully remote workforce, and they've got an employee footprint that spans the full US. Lots of organizations are seeing that embracing remote work allows them to decrease the office space that they have, so that there's an opportunity there to reduce overhead costs potentially on the office facility site. It also provides flexibility so that employees who are mildly ill, you don't want them to come in, whether it's COVID or something else, but they can still work from home and be somewhat productive. Now, the stress would be there on the mildly ill employees. They're still well enough to work. We don't want folks to be working from home when they're truly extremely sick. So, those are the advantages. It's important to recognize that there are definitely challenges associated with remote work. It is not easy to develop and maintain organizational culture. So, you may have a weakened sense of belonging and being part of the organization. The connections that we develop easily, or at least more easily when we're all in the same building at the same time, do not happen as naturally. There's definitely an increase in the stress on employees and fatigue and burnout. Employees working remotely frequently work longer hours. The line between work and personal life gets very much blurred. You no longer have I go in the office, this is when I work, I go home. It's work from home and home from work. Really, both of those things are blending together. One of the primary challenges for managers with remote work is letting go of the age-old myth, and this truly is a myth, and we'll come back to this theme a number of times over the course of our time today. But if I can see you, you're working. If I can't see you, you aren't. That's been a mindset for years and years, and remote work forces us to let go of that. So definitely challenges involved. Are these challenges deal breakers? In my opinion, they are not. but they are important issues to recognize, be thoughtful and intentional about, and realize that it may take a little bit of trial and error attempts to ensure that your agency is overcoming these as you embark on or continue down the path of remote work. So if you are just at a point where you're becoming intentional about developing a remote work strategy, or if you've kind of stumbled into remote work, 2020, 2021 brought you there, but not necessarily in an intentional manner, much more in a reactive rather than proactive manner, and you're trying to get more intentional about it. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things and how you get there. First is realizing there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Every organization, whether it's an insurance agency, whether it's Facebook or Google or something in between, needs to develop remote work and a remote work strategy that looks like every other organization. There are important questions that you need to think about and talk about. You know, how frequently is remote work? Are there positions that remote work can be fully 100% remote? Are we looking at a hybrid model? Many more organizations at this point are looking at hybrid, while there are organizations that are fully remote. Hybrid is really becoming much more the common theme. So open communication with employees is critical. And, you know, I'll take a step back and say that, you know, that sentence applies to everything in terms of how you're running and managing your agency, but no less so critical when it comes to remote work. It's okay and it's appropriate to have conversations that are honest, transparent. You know, you want to communicate with your employees and acknowledge that, you know, you recognize that remote and or hybrid work is here to stay for the foreseeable future, and that this is something that you are, as an agency, you know, dedicated to figuring it out. Also acknowledging that there's a lot to be figured out, and that there will be some trial and error in terms of figuring it out. And hey, we're going to try this for a period of time, and we're going to tweak and modify it when we find difficulties and challenges, and make adjustments as we go along. And acknowledge that, you know, as an organization, as an agency owner, as an agency leader, that you want input for employees, that you aren't making decisions in a vacuum, that you are looking for feedback and input as you develop your work plans. Employees have been going through this whole remote work experiment for 2020, 2021, along with you, and they'll have valuable input. That doesn't mean that, you know, you let the employees make all the decisions. Obviously, there's, you know, back and forth communication that's needed there to figure out that what works on both sides, what challenges are there, what works for the agency, what works for the employees. So we talk about soliciting feedback from your employees, talking about, you know, how has it worked over the last couple of years? How's the culture been impacted? What are the challenges that you've seen? What can be done to address some of these challenges? What kinds of roles are best suited for remote work, for hybrid work? What types of roles or what work specifically needs to be done in person? Some of these things really require challenging our traditional thinking, identifying what really requires an individual to be in the office, what can only be done from in the office, what other things can be done from another location. So it, again, requires us to challenge our thinking a little bit each time we say this is something that has to be done from in the office. We should follow that question up with why. Why does it need to be done in the office? To just make sure that we're not going forward based on because it's always been done that way. What kind of and what amount of face-to-face time do you need in order to maintain connections and maintain culture? And how do you onboard folks in a hybrid or remote environment? So having dialogue with your employees on these topics can help to ensure that you're developing a remote work strategy that works across the board, both for employees as well as within the agency. So in terms of what you need to have in place for remote work to work, number one is skilled managers. So even if we're not talking about remote work, the number one reason why employees leave jobs is because of their managers. The old statement was, employees don't leave companies, they don't leave jobs, they leave managers. So this isn't something that's newly important and only important because of remote work. But skilled managers are critical for the success of remote work. Skilled managers don't fall prey to that myth we talked about before that says, if I can see you, you're working. If I can't see you, you're not. Skilled managers manage based on outcomes and results. They clearly communicate expectations, and they look and see if those results have happened and manage based on that. If we're managing in that manner, it doesn't matter if we can see the employee. My favorite thing about that old myth is I think we can all think of people, I certainly can over my career, who were in their seat, in their office, in their cubicle from sunrise to sunset and didn't get a doggone thing done. The failure of that old myth was the presumption that because you are here, you're getting work done and you're being effective. So it's good to have that old myth challenged and to work away from that. And again, good skilled managers are managing based on outcome and results. Now, skilled managers don't just happen. Too frequently, people who are good at the technical part of their job, strong individual contributors, are promoted into a management or supervisory position, but don't have the skills to help them be successful in that role. So it's critical to ensure that managers, and that includes yourself as an agency leader, an agency owner, have the training needed to be good at the people management stuff. People management is not easy, and being strong in insurance, being strong at dealing with customers and clients, being good in sales, knowing the products inside and out, those things do not translate automatically into good people management skills. So it's critical to ensure that your folks and yourself have training in those management skills. And that's highly important for those who are managing people, whether it's remotely or not. Skilled managers are also regularly checking in with their employees. With a remote workforce, this needs to be more intentional. You've got to be critical about building connections and trust within a remote environment, making sure that that personal connection happens. So we talk about, yep, go ahead.
Hey, Karen. We're heading into about a little over 11:35, 11:36, and
Okay.
we did get some questions, so I would like to address them. We do have a question from Tim Burris. I hope I am pronouncing his name correct. He says, "Hi, Karen, do you have any suggestions on monitoring employee production, or is there a shift to pay for the job?"
Okay, so monitoring, interesting, because the National Labor Relations Bureau has come out recently, very recently this week, with some pushback on, because there's software out there that you can put on, and it monitors when employees are working and what they're doing and all kinds of things. And there's been some pushback legally on that. I think that one, there's monitoring, the other piece is time. So to me, there's two parts of this question. Monitoring employee, to me, isn't so critical. Again, if we are clearly communicating expectations and following up on whether the results are happening. So if as a manager, as an agency owner, you're saying this is what you're responsible for delivering. This is the time frame it's expected to happen within. If there are issues and problems, I need to hear that from you. Either those results are happening or they're not. So if someone's responsible for getting back to customers within a 24-hour time period, within a 12-hour time period, within 2 hours, if that turnaround isn't happening, that's the issue. So it's not necessarily so much having to monitor, but looking for those results. Are the expectations and the results being achieved? On the other side, if you've got non-exempt employees, you do need to ensure that they are recording all time worked and that you're paying them for that time. So I think that answered the question.
Okay. We have another comment from Lisa Pari. We started running reports within our applied ethics software and learned an employee was taking 3-hour lunches, and one day she didn't log in at all. She lost her work from home privileges, and we brought her back to the office. She left and moved to a new agency 2 months later with full-time remote work. So I believe that's a comment that Lisa has. We appreciate the comment. Is there anything that you would like to note about that, Karen?
No, I mean, certainly, just like there are employees who will take advantage and not work when they're in the office and look for the opportunity to fly below the radar. You know, there are employees who work remotely and will take advantage of it. Again, if we're looking at what employees are responsible for accomplishing, managing them based on the results, and are they getting their job done or not, and dealing with performance issues when they happen, from my perspective, it looks the same whether it's in the office or whether it's remote.
One more question, and this is from Sarah Brown. She noted, maybe you can address the question at the end, and here we are. We have fully remote employees who are expected to come in the office only for staff meetings and see clients. They see the clients either in the office or traveling to see them. We also have hybrid employees who come in once a week. Everyone accepts their position and duties as remote or hybrid, but we have another level of detail to answer in compensation. Can you talk about compensating both sets of employees for their commute to the office, both in mileage reimbursement and their drive time? must they be treated equally with this?
I mean, typically, drive time into the office is not compensated. For employees who are in the office 5 days a week, when we go, you know, that wasn't time that employees are paid for, and they were not reimbursed for mileage. So typically that's not something that would be considered payable either from, you know, compensated time or mileage reimbursement. Now, I have seen some employers that are providing some sort of extra compensation for employees who do have to come in 5 days a week. I have one client, it's a bank. Their branch employees have to come in all the time. So they were providing what they were calling a gas subsidy to help balance things out against those employees who weren't having to come in 5 days a week. And I think they were doing something like $75 a month. It was a temporary program. It was recognizing the high cost of gas and also just trying to address the imbalance when some folks are having to come in all the time and others were not. Is that a broad practice? Not from my perspective, but there are organizations that are doing something to address it.
Sarah does have a follow-up question. If a remote employee comes into the office in the middle of the day for a staff meeting, their commute time is not able to be compensated?
I mean, it can be. You're just not required to. I mean, you can compensate for commute time.
It sounds like she says, okay, thank you. I would like to thank Tim, Lisa, and Sarah for being engaging and asking questions. And for your questions, you're going to be receiving this great t-shirt, Eat, Sleep, Insurance. Sarah, I do believe you have one, but Tim and Lisa, we're going to follow up with you regarding your size, and we'll put it in the mail to you. So thank you so much for engaging. Karen, continue to proceed with your presentation.
Okay. All right, great. So again, talking about, you know, things that are critical for success in a remote work plan. You've got to be intentional about creating opportunities for connection and collaboration. These things don't happen as easily. People don't gather around the water cooler when they're all working in different spots. So there are lots of different ways organizations are addressing these things. The organization I work for, we have a weekly, what we call our huddle. It's a half an hour, end of the day on Wednesday. Everybody comes together for a Zoom or a Teams meeting. We talk about, it's a weekly update on what's going on, but also just a little bit, we start each meeting with an icebreaker question just to have everybody chatting and spend some time together. Organizations, some of them have informal water coolers. It's actually like a virtual chat place where employees can go and hang out, virtual lunches. We were also doing a buddy rotation with Herbein Mosteller, so that each month you had you were buddied up with someone and would spend half an hour or so twice a month just chatting, spending time, just socializing, those things that weren't happening automatically. It is important, to whatever degree you can, to participate, to set aside time for people to all be in the same place physically at the same time, whether that's for meetings, whether it's for going out to lunch or an after work socialization time. So meeting periodically, to whatever degree you can, is critical important. One of the things when you're looking at a hybrid situation is don't have employees come into the office to do the same thing that they can do from home. You want to focus on opportunities for collaboration. seeing your employees spending time chatting with coworkers when they're in the office is a good thing. That's building connection, that's building culture. So sometimes I think managers and owners have, you know, the mindset that like, okay, everybody's coming in the office and then all they're doing is standing around talking. But it's good to have that connection time. When everybody's in the office, obviously that's a good time to have some purposeful, effective meetings, not meetings just for the sake of meetings, but we're all in the same place. Good to get around the same table and talk. But it's also important to have as much flexibility as possible. And what I mean by that is, while people were working fully remotely, they got used to being there and being able to run out and get their kid at the bus stop, or whatever, or get to that 4 o'clock soccer game. Soccer games may or may not have been going on, but to allow that flexibility to continue even when folks are having to come in the office, it is keeping the good things that came with our remote work, our forced remote work that happened in 2020 and 2021. Make sure that you have a culture of feedback and recognition, that you've got two-way communication going, especially with remote workers. You know, don't assume, I'm not hearing anything, everything's fine. You've got to seek input and look for ways to support your team and to drive performance. Employee surveys are a wonderful way to get feedback and information on what your folks are thinking. And again, we're looking to do all this remote work in a way that helps to maintain the productivity, maintain the performance of the organization, but decrease the turnover potential that we've got and the likelihood that we're going to lose folks. So you want to make sure you don't end up disconnected. You've got people working remotely and you've got things going on that they're just not communicating to you. Be aware when you're providing feedback for performance and recognition that you don't fall into unintentional preferential treatment for those who are in person over those who are remote. Again, a lot of these things are just require much more intentional thought on our parts in order to make sure that they work. Make sure that you're still looking at employee training and advancement. Employees still want opportunities to learn and grow. Again, this is a place where you want to make sure that you're being intentional and not looking just to grow those folks who are in front of you day in and day out, but considering your full workforce. And don't assume that employees who are working, say you've got someone who's working fully remotely, you've got an opportunity that requires in-person work. It requires either hybrid or fully in person. Don't assume that your remote workers aren't interested or won't be capable of doing that. Succeeding at remote work definitely requires an investment in technology. Many agencies and other organizations had to do this back in 2020 and 2021, but certainly making sure that all the right pieces are in place to support remote work. Yes, there is an investment that's required here, but many organizations are also realizing that if they don't make these investments in technology today, these technologies that will support remote work, these are also technologies that are really needed to meet the needs of the customers of the future and many of the customers of today. So it's not investment that's just required for remote work and for employees. It's also important, excuse me, talking too long. Important to encourage healthy boundaries between work and personal life, to set some guidelines there. Is there a requirement for a dedicated physical workspace for those who are working from a home office? Make sure that you're clarifying the hours and schedule expectations. And that's on both sides, on when people should be working and when they shouldn't be working. So if there's a requirement that if you're working remotely from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock with a half an hour for lunch, that needs to be clarified and communicated. If there's more flexibility, a lot of remote workers work more flexible schedules that can provide positive things for organizations, because maybe if you need phone coverage, it allows you to get that coverage for a longer period of time. You've got an employee who really doesn't want to start working until 11 o'clock in the morning rather than 9. Maybe they're working from 11 to, my mouth isn't going to be 11 to 7. But it may give you the opportunity to get some coverage earlier in the day or later in the day that wasn't necessarily there. With non-exempt employees, especially, it's important to make sure that they are not checking emails, sending responses and things like that after hours, because any of that time for a non-exempt worker would need to be paid. You want to make sure that your employees are maintaining some work-life balance when they are working remotely. And that's not as easy necessarily, because you don't walk out the office door and then suddenly be in your home life world. Okay. You want to make sure you're, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, before we transition, we are getting more questions, and I want to make sure that we do have time to address the questions. We got another one from Sarah. She says, pulse surveys. What type of questions should we ask on pulse surveys? How often should we send them? Do you recommend a platform for sending?
Okay. Typically, let's see, pulse surveys typically focus on 3 or 4 key questions that you're trying to gather employee input on. It's going to be different from organization to organization, and very frequently there's a broader employee engagement survey that goes out initially, tends to focus on things like culture, leadership, pay, benefits, remote work, all of those kinds of things, and asks a broad range of questions. Then pulse surveys are often used as a follow-up for those items that were recognized or identified as areas of issue, and you want to get an idea of where things stand. So on a pulse survey, if you've got certain things that you're looking to explore, because you know it's something you're actively working on improving and improving the views of your employees on, that's where you would focus. In terms of specific platforms, we work largely with an organization called Energage. I'm honestly not sure how small an organization they can come down to, but that's certainly worth checking out.
We do have another question from Nicole. Nicole notes and asks, how do you keep things fair with all employees, especially since everyone's home situation is different? Some have kids or grandkids, but others may have a family nearby. We have several issues with sick children, but the employees without children get upset when I am flexible and allow them to work from home for a day or two.
And I think anytime we're managing people, we're managing individuals. So whether it's remote work or other items, ensuring that you are doing everything that you can to meet individual employees' needs. Older workers, imagine, while they may have different needs for flexibility, still have times when they would have a reason to, you're getting a new appliance delivered. Can I work from home today? Not to specifically call out and say, hey, the only time we're going to look at remote work is somebody who's got a sick kid at home. So I think if you're broad enough in where you're allowing those things, it can apply to everyone.
These are great questions. And Nicole, for that question, we will be sending you one of these great t-shirts, and we'll follow up with you regarding your size and where to mail it to. We are going to be wrapping up our webinar. So Karen, thank you so much. I'll let you continue. If you do have any more questions, please submit them in the chat room. We will follow up after the webinar, or you can always ask Claire or Dawn. Don't hesitate to give them a call or email them. Again, that's a great part of your member benefits, is contacting them. They will take great care of you and your agency. So Karen, continue in wrapping up, and thank you so much to our IA&B members for joining. We have been recording this webinar and we will send it out to you so you have it as a reference. Thank you so much. Karen?
Okay, I will. Just a couple slides left and I will go through them quickly. But obviously remote work, especially if you have 100% remote folks, it requires intentional redoing of your onboarding process. Some organizations say, hey, guess what? For the first 3 months or whatever period of time, you do need to be on site. Other times, if you're hiring someone across the country, that's not an option, but you need to be intentional and make sure that folks aren't getting lost out there. Don't overlook the need to have written formal policies, agreements, processes. There is a packet of remote work support documents available through IA&B. You can find the link on the website. So if you don't have some things in place there, there's some guidelines and resources out there for you. So in summary, the critical inputs for making remote work, you've got to have skilled managers, be intentional about opportunities for connection. What's done in the office really should look different than what's done remotely. Provide feedback and recognition. Don't forget about training and development. Have the right technology. Ensure that there is a healthy balance between work and home life. Revamp your onboarding and create formal policies and put them in place. So certainly we're in challenging times to be in a position of leadership and agency ownership. You're not alone in this. Every organization is going through these things. Don't beat yourself up if you get things wrong the first time. That's one of the important parts of having a dialogue going with your employees as you're embarking on remote work or continuing down that journey. There's trial and error that's involved, and it's appropriate and totally okay to say, hey, we're figuring this out. We're going to do some things. We're going to adjust as we go along. So there's lots of things that are important to make your agency successful in managing in a remote work environment. And you bring them all together. We've got trust, communication, seeking input, clarifying expectations, focusing on results, checking in, encouraging social interaction, being intentional about team building, providing feedback, asking for feedback. Share your company values, be flexible, leverage technology, expect challenges, and be willing to make mistakes. So we bring all those things together and success is pretty well guaranteed. And that's it.
Hey, Karen, I misspoke. We ended up getting a really great question that I thought was a fantastic way to end this webinar. And that is from Lisa. And she asked, what training is available? You had mentioned that, with all the changes, managers and owners may need to obtain new skills to manage hybrid and remote workers. What training is available? Where can our agents go?
Okay, there are many organizations that offer management and supervisory training. Some organizations are packaging it specifically for remote work, but as I said earlier, managing well looks the same whether it's in a remote environment or whether it's in person. It's about communication, it's about expectations, it's about results and providing feedback, gathering feedback, So a quick Google search really on management and supervisory training. There aren't specific organizations that I'm going to sit here necessarily and recommend. The organization I work for does periodically offer management training programs and supervisory training. I'd be happy to check on the schedule to see if there's an upcoming group of sessions that's out there, but certainly we're not the only place that you could get that. So Lisa, if you wanted to, I think it was Lisa that posed that question. If she wants to email me, I'd be happy to send her if we've got a schedule coming up anytime soon. But there are lots of organizations. And again, it doesn't have to be remote specific because good management skills look the same, whether it's remote or in person.
Karen, again, thank you so much for this fantastic webinar. The information was very helpful to our agents and it couldn't be any better. So thank you very much for your time and helping our members. We really appreciate it. And again, if you need any help or questions, please go to our website, iabforme.com, or contact any one of us. We are here to help. Have a great fall day, everyone.
Thank you all for your time. Take care.